Can just call you Star?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
very cool.
Yeah, most people just shorten it to Star or something.
You have a really convenient name for shortening. I mean, I do too, but I've got a friend who she goes on like VR chat, but her tag is okay cool anyways. So people don't know what the fuck to call her ever.
Welcome to the Social Priority Podcast, only on Star Panda TV. I'm Star Panda, and today we talk about transition myths. But first, let me introduce Catboy.
Hi.
I usually have a longer intro for people, but I'm at a
I
loss
don't know. I'm
on
just
how
some
to introduce
guy.
you. Yeah, some
I
guy.
okay, I can do it.
Some guy on Twitter.
Some literally just some guy on Twitter, former streamer for like 3 days, no, 8 days. um, current illustrator for Keffels. I talk about trans guys' issues a lot and like the complexities of it, I suppose.
Mhm.
And I also am like very autistically obsessed with researching trans neurology.
Right.
So that's a thing. I mean, and oppression rate statistics, et cetera, et cetera. I do a lot of researching for fun.
Wow. That is probably the best kind of person to be on for this topic. So, um yeah, what the fuck do you do in your like day to day?
I'm gonna be totally real. I wake up at like 2 p.m. I get on my computer and I look at Twitter all day, literally all day.
All right. Well, that's
Like,
it's
and I
interesting.
watch streams, etc. No, it's I'm getting back into like doing work again and like drawing for myself again because like
Mhm.
after the whole like taking down of kiwi farms, it's been weighing on me a little bit. Like now that it's over, it just all hit me, like everything that happened.
How was that for you?
Oh my god, it was fucking terrible. Like so I'm the only person on Keffel's executive team that posts my face online and is openly trans and has like a minor following.
Mhm.
So I was usually the second to be targeted right after her when they were going after anyone on the team. So when like around the time that she got swatted, uh they tried to swat me too by doing the exact same thing, like sending threats to congress people or like local government officials and saying like I'm going to kill all the cis people. But my police department knows what swatting is, so they didn't swat me. Unfortunately, it was not the same for her.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot. It's a lot to deal with at 19. Like
Yeah.
honestly, not my favorite thing ever.
Um so what like how I guess you were pretty involved with the Drop Kiwi Farms campaign. Uh what kind of um things did you do on that campaign, I guess?
So the funny thing is, despite being like the second person to be targeted, I was easily the least qualified out of everyone. Like I wasn't really doing that much. Like I
Yeah.
would post about it. I would like drum up support as best as I could.
Mhm.
Um I gave like minor advice on some things sometimes, like from what I knew, but other than that, I'm like I literally just draw funny pictures and like know things about trans people. That's like it's like all I do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's ridiculous that you got pretty much swept up in that without really having much like to do with like the whole campaign as a whole, but like
Yeah.
I'm glad you came out pretty much unscathed. Um
Yeah. No, it's been like a good thing that nobody else on the team was really harmed by anything.
yeah.
Like we got off pretty well, but I was doxxed, so I'm trying to move out of Texas now
Yeah,
because
that's fair.
this is a terrible place to be doxxed.
Yeah. Um so let's go ahead and go into some transition myths. This is probably going to be just pretty like casual cuz
Yeah,
like I
like
just have
lighthearted shit, I'm sure.
yeah, I just have like a list of things that we could talk about for these myths. So like I guess first things first, what age do people usually start like HRT and surgeries and stuff like that?
So I'm actually aware of like when people usually come out, which is for trans masks, it's early teens, 14 around that time. For trans femmes, it's around like the 20s.
Mhm.
But the average age for starting HRT is definitely over 20.
Yeah.
Like like I'm a youth transitioner. I'm an incredibly rare case. Like you don't find a lot of kids that you can like fully diagnose or like that even can get diagnosis because you have to be super fucking diagnosed to transition under the age of 18. But like shit, I guess I was dysphoric enough.
Yeah. What kind of HRT did you go through?
I went on testosterone when I was like early 16
Mhm.
and I got top surgery when I was late 16. So like I did shit real quick. But I came out when I was 14.
Like which ones of these would be are they reversible, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
Oh, so like testosterone, like the effect of it?
Either testosterone, puberty blockers, or anything else you took.
So I didn't take puberty blockers, but the
Mhm.
thing about puberty blockers is they they don't do anything except halt hormone production. Not growth hormone production, but estrogen and testosterone. Like so people on hormone blockers often get a bit taller because their growth plates don't close yet because that's what estrogen and testosterone do. They close your growth plates. But
Gotcha.
if you halt the process of like puberty, it doesn't really do anything. So you just sit in a paused state for longer than your peers until you can verify that you need HRT.
Mhm.
But if you go off of it, you start developing normally. It's literally just a pause. A lot of people equate it to like chemical castration, but chemical castration is just puberty blockers. It just blocks hormones. That's all it does. And it's reversible too. Like people think it's lasting damage. There's no lasting damage.
Right. Um Give me a second.
There is, however, like you have to take more vitamins because bone density reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's really easy to just like get proper nutrition. Like if you're lucky enough to get blockers, like you can diet properly for like the nutrition you need.
Are these uh things like for HRT, are they just for HRT or are they used for other things too?
Puberty blockers?
Either puberty blockers or testosterone or estrogen or any of those things.
Oh yeah. Oh my god. That's actually most of the usage for puberty blockers and HRT. So like cis people are the biggest consumers of testosterone and estrogen. It's just that it matches their assigned sex. So like women past menopause will be taking estrogen. Men can get prescribed testosterone if they like list enough symptoms of low T, like fairly easily too.
Hmm.
Um, And puberty blockers are most often used on children that start developing too early. So, like, that's how we know that there's no ill effects, because we know that it can properly pause the puberty of someone who started it when they were like 5 or 8. And like going on that doesn't harm them in any way. It just pauses.
Right. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of like I guess non-clarity, I guess, if that's a word.
Yeah. I mean,
About
it's been medical standard for the last 30 years.
yeah. Um and like there are people who don't pay attention to medical standard, especially around this time.
Especially around trans people, especially around youth transition.
Yeah. And it's interesting that they went after puberty blockers when children already use puberty blockers for various things other than transition.
I mean, that's just because like they're not using puberty blockers the way that they want them to be used. Like
Right.
they don't have an issue with kids being on quote experimental drugs. They're not experimental. They've been verified for decades.
Yeah.
Um, they're fine with that shit. They're fine with harming kids. Like they're fine with like doing operations on intersex babies to like change their physical structure
Or
without the kid's
even
consent, obviously. But they just don't want you. They don't want kids doing things that like don't align with cisness.
or even cis babies.
No,
They
literally.
do like circumcision and all that, and that's also technically mutilation
No,
according to
it's
them.
literally mutilation.
Yeah. But like thousands, if not millions of people are still doing it to their kids.
Yeah.
Um let's see. What surgeries are there for like trans people, and um I guess when do people usually start doing those surgeries?
There is a lot of surgeries out there, like a lot of them. So the first ones that we automatically think of are like phalloplasty, which is a surgical reconstruction of a penis, and vaginoplasty, which is a surgical reconstruction of a vagina. Those are like the basic two. There's top surgery, which for trans men, or trans masks in general, it's the flattening of the chest in a way that's very specifically aesthetically masculine, instead of like normal mastectomies, which don't care too much for the physical look afterwards. It's mostly about removing all the tissue.
Hmm.
But for trans masks, it's just like removing what needs to be removed in a way that's aesthetically pleasing. Um, Top surgery, I guess you could call it, for trans femmes would probably just be like a boob job,
Yeah.
like breast implants. But there are a lot of different genital surgeries. There's like there's all kinds. There's some where you have like both things. There's some where you have like there's I think it's called metodioplasty for trans men, which is just like you it's just like kind of small. Like there's not the big skin graft that they take off of your arm. It's just like a small thing, but like big enough.
What exactly is it?
It's like they take tissue and they put it in the area of the like it has to be on a clitoris that's experienced bottom growth, or like growth on testosterone. They usually make the person getting it take DHT,
Hmm.
which is the thing that is made from testosterone that does most of the heavy masculinizing, like the big jump of the voice drop, body hair, male pattern baldness, muscle growth, especially. It very much has to do with scar tissue. It can make you heal faster and somewhat better, but it's not that much. But yeah, that's the thing that that actually gets blocked when you take finasteride, which is like The balding thing
Hmm.
that makes you stop balding, I guess. Um, there are so many different surgeries. Like I can't even like count them all.
I know for trans femme, you can wait to do the vaginoplasty and just do orchiectomy,
Yeah.
um, which is basically just removing the testicles. Um, Although you usually want to keep the skin there, in case you do want the full surgery,
Mhm.
because they do use that skin for like anything they need around that area. So, um,
Yeah.
excuse me. What other ways do people use these surgeries, and do they use them on cis people?
I mean, so a lot of the methods of these types of surgeries are reconstruction type methods.
Mhm.
Like they add volume to certain areas or they take away certain things. So I wouldn't say I don't know if they're used on cis people, but I'm sure there are cases out there of like cis intersex people who like for example, maybe there's an intersex woman who has like a bit too much growth down there. I'm sure like she probably wouldn't be comfortable with that unless she's just like super confident and like super incredibly like okay with it, which
Mhm.
not a lot of people are because the social standards, etc. Um, I'm sure like that would be a case where a similar type of surgery could happen, I guess, but it's been a specialized thing for a long time. Like vaginoplasties, I think came about in like the 20s or 30s, or the first one was done around then. And for phalloplasty, it was like 30s or 40s, if I
Mhm.
remember correctly. Like these things have been around for trans people for a long time. They're very like specially and specifically developed, but they use methods that are used on cis people all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I have heard of cis women getting like a vaginoplasty, and
Hmm.
it's basically like you said, reconstructing those areas and like making sure they're happy with their body, just like
Yeah.
how trans people feel.
So like they use a lot of like the beautification methods. Like
Yeah.
for vaginoplasties on cis women, it would be like they want a certain look, and that would be the thing that's changed. But for trans femmes, it would be like the reconstruction into the more like beautiful looking structure, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's
Um
all dependent on societal standards, I suppose.
True. Yeah. um how common is transition regret?
Oh my god, I know so much about this. Okay,
Go for it.
so let's start with detransition in kids. Okay, there have been studies put out where it says that children before puberty, the likelihood of detransition is around 80%, which that's not an issue because that's before you would do any type of like surgery, hormones, etc. Like if you detransition as a kid, that's cool. But studies have found that around ooh, I feel like I need to pull up the thing, but it's so close to like a tiny number. It's a very small number. Either like 7 to 2% is like what I'm automatically inclined to say. Um, After the age of 12 or 13 years old, the likelihood of detransition for a child that's presented with consistent dysphoria is it's basically nothing. Like after that point of puberty, you pretty much know. And the older you get after that point, like more certain it becomes.
Hmm.
Um, for adults, detransition is already incredibly rare. Like I know it's under 1% or like 2%, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Um, but the thing about detransition is that most detransitioners do it for safety reasons. So the vast majority of detransitioners will retransition at some point in their lives if it's safe to do so. Like, detransition is not very common, not at all.
Right.
And when it does happen, like, detransitioners need support. Of course they do. But the
Absolutely.
vast, vast majority of people who transition will not detransition.
So, what does detransition look like for younger people, like kids and teenagers?
For kids and teenagers, so since the rate of treatment for teenagers, like medical treatment for teenagers is so low that it kinda depends on that. But for children, it would be just like if like you dressed a certain way and like changed your pronouns and name, you would just go back to what you had before. Or you might go back to a different name if you just didn't like that one in the first place.
So you're
Um,
telling me that kids aren't going to be on HRT or anything? Or
no.
puberty blockers?
No, they don't even get near puberty blockers until like maybe the age of 12. 12 to 14, I think. I don't know. But generally puberty blockers are given to like 14 or around then.
Mhm.
Um, but later teens, I suppose, maybe if they get on HRT for like a while, and it won't be very many years if they do, because you don't get put on hormones in your early teens. Like it doesn't really happen. If you detransition in your teens, that means you've been on hormones for a very, very short amount of time to the point where the effects of it are so reversible, like incredibly reversible. Like if you get a little voice drop, you can just voice train it up. If you get a little bit of breast development, you can possibly get surgery in the future, or you can just like work out in a certain way that gets rid of the fat deposits.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
there's not much permanence. Not unless you're like transitioning for over 5 years. I would say at this point, I there's effects that I have that probably wouldn't go away, but I don't plan on detransitioning, so that doesn't bother me. I've
Yeah.
only been transitioning for like medically for maybe 4 years now,
Mhm.
so I'm getting up to that point of like no going back, I suppose. But
I
there's always
suppose.
going back. There's always going back because if if a cis woman transitions to a man and regrets it, she can transition back the exact same way that a trans femme can transition from male to female.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
And like it's it's really mostly their choice, right? Like they I guess like conservatives try to make it out to be like this problem of like people being forced to transition, but this never happens. Like it's
Yeah.
always the choice of the person who is transitioning. And with these surgeries, even with cis people, like they have the choice to get these kinds of things happening to them. Um, like I like the regret for the surgeries is about the same as a cis person.
So a surgical regret for trans people is drastically lower, actually.
Oh, that makes more sense.
So the rate of surgical regret for transition related things is under 1%. The surgical regret for things like an appendectomy, like normal medical procedures, is around 14.4%.
Whoa,
Yeah, big
that
difference. Trans people
yeah,
know what the fuck they want.
that's a lot higher for an appendectomy than I thought.
Yeah.
Like usually it's done where like you're about to die from appendicitis, right?
Yeah, that's not exactly for an appendectomy, that's just general medical things,
Fair.
like say you get, like, a knee reconstruction. there's ways that you could have recovered from the initial injury that wouldn't maybe have required that surgery, but
Mhm.
that surgery gets recommended to a lot of people because it's like, well, I mean, it gets you on your feet faster,
Gotcha.
and a lot of people regret it.
And I guess it makes sense because trans people are not pushed to get surgeries
Yeah.
generally, and like they have to push themselves. Uh,
There's oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
There's pressure in certain trans communities.
Hmm.
But those trans communities are like trans medicalists, like true scum communities that are like, you have to have dysphoria to be trans, you have to transition binary, you have to do all of this. And those are the types of people that usually are on the more conservative side. Normal trans people, because trans meds are abnormal, like they are abnormal. I don't care.
Hmm.
Like I was one, so I can say that. um, Normal trans people don't push it on people. In fact, we're mostly like, "Hey, you should, like, talk to someone about this. You should, like, make sure you know what you want." And, like, I mean, if what you've done so far makes you feel happy, keep going in that direction. See what happens.
I actually want to ask you about that. You said you were formerly a trans medicalist. What was your
Mhm.
thought process and all that?
So, like, you know how I'm, like, very fact-oriented, like, I like researching. Um, at the time, I was 14 or, like, 14, 15.
Hmm.
And researching transition and like researching trans people, there were two paths that I found back then. One path was anybody can be trans. It's a feeling like you just feel like a man trapped in a woman's body, etc., etc. And I was like, that does not sound correct. That doesn't sound accurate. That doesn't sound like scientific at all. And it's not. It's just like it's how liberals usually frame trans acceptance.
Hmm.
Um, but the other side of it was like there's a certain validity to it. And back then I was very dysphoric. I was pretty obsessed with cis people seeing me the way that I wanted to be seen. So I presented very binary. I don't really anymore. Like I wear makeup almost every time I go out, etc. But I only do that because I pass no matter how I present, even if I go like full femme.
Yeah.
Um, But back then, I was very concerned with like validity. And my peers, they were like Texans, and this was like 4 years of high school, having to be around these people and be the most acceptable trans person, so that I could get through to them when I debated them. And I genuinely do think that it was probably better for me to have been like really binary, really like I don't know, like well, like, sucking up to an extent back then, because otherwise I would have been I got a good bit of violence, but not not enough to make me, like, I don't know, like, really get suicidal or anything. Um, but I was debating these people every day, and I would say to them, like, "Oh, yeah, well, there are some people that are just faking it, I guess, but they're rare. They don't really happen. Trans people have dysphoria." And dysphoria works this way. And back then, I didn't even know very well how dysphoria works. Now I do. Now I know like multiple theories of dysphoria. Back then, it wasn't as good. I didn't know as many details, but I got out of the mindset very quickly.
I guess what was your thought process coming out of trans medicalism?
So actually, it was I distinctly remember one time I was on Reddit. Oh God, Reddit. And I was like arguing. I was like, yeah, I call myself a transsexual because like I have like gender dysphoria and I want to change my sex, and like this makes me a transsexual. And the person I was arguing with like explained in a really good way that like it's kind of fucked up to like to put that level of like validation on it, on like on dysphoria itself, or on being binary, or on medical transition.
Mhm.
And at that time, I was like, "Oh, huh." But now, looking back, I kinda disagree with her. Like, I think transsexual is totally fine. In fact, like, I use it on myself now, but only to spite cis people who think that, you can't physically change biological sex, which you absolutely can. Like, you can change your sex traits.
Mhm.
So I use it to be like a funny little guy.
I mean, seeing your tweets, you are a funny little guy.
I'm like a terrible poster. I don't post very well.
I don't
I'm
either.
I don't have like the entertaining type of autism. I have like the I have to clarify when I make a joke autism.
Yeah, I feel like tweeting is a special kind of like a skill that you need to be born
Yeah.
with. Like
No,
you can't
literally.
just become a good poster.
The best posters I know, like all of them, have BPD.
What is bipolar disorder?
Borderline personality
Oh,
disorder,
borderline.
which is what bipolar falls into now.
Fair, yeah.
Um, it's like they have a superpower. They're just so good at it.
Here in that oh I was going to transition really well, but then my brain was like, no, you're not going to. Is being trans a mental illness?
Um, that's a very complicated question, but I would immediately say no, because mental illness implies that it can be cured by head meds, or it can be cured by like some type of mental treatment, which it absolutely cannot. Um, Generally speaking, when we're looking at dysphoria, we don't see anything happening in, or much happening in the frontal lobe, or in like the higher level brain functions that do like emotions and like personality, etc. Um, it's almost always centered in like places like the parietal lobe, which is how your brain interfaces with your body. It's the same area of your brain that that causes phantom limb syndrome. Like if you lose your hand, your brain knows it's supposed to be there, so it gives you the phantom sensation. Sometimes it gives you a phantom pain, and that's exactly the type, or the area of the brain that's activated with trans people with dysphoria. Um, in fact, there was a study. It's my favorite study. Oh my god. They took a group of trans men and a group of cis women, and they put them under an MRI, and they touched their chest and their hand. There are two major things that that happened with this. With the cis women, the sensory area activated, and the ownership area, or like what we can presume is the ownership area, activated. So that means the brain claimed it as a part of their body. For the trans men, it they got reduced sensation, like somewhat reduced, but almost no ownership reaction. And these are like deep wiring things. These are on the level of like hunger and pain. Like they're automatic responses, and they're set in stone. They're not subject to neuroplasticity on any meaningful level. Um, so if you're gonna call being trans anything, I would say it's, or like having gender dysphoria specifically. Being trans is a very social thing, but gender dysphoria is it is like a medical thing. It's like a thing that exists.
That's insane. I've never heard that study before. I would love to see it, actually.
I think it's something called like altered white matter response, in female to male identified transsexuals or something, or altered white matter response to sensory something in female to male something. That's enough keywords to find it easily. Um, but there's also the root cause of dysphoria, or like what makes the brain different, that there's no psychological basis for it. Like, it's not in any of the areas of the brain where you can like experience a change. So a lot of theories posit that exposure to certain hormones during fetal development, or in like improper exposure, or like incomplete exposure, it would be a better term, uh, can cause different parts of the body to be different. Just even in cis people, like if you're exposed to hormones, like if a cis woman is exposed to a little bit more testosterone in fetal development because her mom has maybe PCOS or something, or any other type of condition that causes testosterone spikes, that cis women might come out looking a little bit more masculine, like bone structure wise. The brain is like an organ. It's a part of the body. It's a physical thing, and we know that there's a difference in like how it sees a male and a female body, because trans people exist, because dysphoria exists. So we know that there's a difference, because like humans have like different features than each other based on biological sex. um
How
I don't know.
much?
I don't know if I'm explaining this well enough.
No, you're good. I actually had a question.
Mm.
Like, I guess how much do you think the brain relies on internal processes versus like outward, external, like I guess nature versus nurture type of thing. Um, like the environment affecting how your brain develops, and like how much it could affect how you perceive yourself in the world.
So this would relate a lot more to the social side of transitioning,
Hmm.
because like with the multiple theories of dysphoria that we have at this current time, um, there's not super good explanations for like the behavioral, or like wanting to be like feminine, or like wanting to do this or that, like gendered things. Um, but it's I mean, like, there's obviously like trans femmes generally like to be feminine. Trans mascs generally, sometimes, often like to be masculine. Like, it's just it's a thing. But I'd say there's a lot there that has to do with the way that you're raised, like your idealization of what gender is formed from a young age. So say a young trans woman is taught, like, this is what women are, this is what men are, and her internal sense of gender is telling her that she relates more to the women automatically. Like, this is a thing we notice in like children. Young boys will push down their voices automatically to mimic grown men, and young girls will push up their voices to like imitate a sort of femininity. But they both have the same essential register. They're like choosing to change it
Hmm.
based on their identity. I, for instance, pushed down my voice as a kid. Like, I always had a deep voice, or like I always pushed it to be deeper because I
Hmm.
was subconsciously imitating men. Um, but there's so much complexity to that part of the question, but it's certainly not any of the things that cause the essential dysphoria, the chopped down to like the body identity, like the body ownership part of the brain. Like, that's very like a non-emotional thing. But the social part, like the way we're raised, that makes it an emotional thing. Like,
Hmm.
you see discomfort with certain body parts, and you realize what that is, like, it means for you. and then you start being super uncomfortable with the roles that were set upon you from the start, because you recognize that you're supposed to be this different person with this different set of features, and people with that set of features have to do that, and you want to do that.
So it literally, for trans people, it literally doesn't match up, like your brain versus your body.
Yeah, I mean, like, I didn't explain that, like, super, super perfectly, but humans are sexually dimorphic. There are certain features that are, like, very, like, clearly structurally different on female and male, like, bodies. There are, like, overlaps in a lot of secondary sex characteristics, like, you can have, like a woman can have, like, masculine features, like, that's a thing, but the essential, like, characteristics externally, generally tend to be different. And we know that this part of the brain, that controls body ownership, we know that it can tell, like, what sex you're supposed to be, because I mean, like, we know that because dysphoria exists. Because trans people have a different reaction in that part of the brain. It's like it proves that, actually. Um, what was I saying? Well, there is one thing. There's one specific thing. Damn, I lost it.
Damn.
Damn.
Do you remember what it was about?
Um, it's just like explaining the. Oh, okay. I remembered it.
Yes.
So it's generally thought that this phase of development in fetal development is like, it's like once your brain is exposed to certain hormones or not exposed to certain hormones, then it locks in place past that point. Like there's a phase in fetal development where your facial features lock in place, and like it can be kind of changed by like puberty, but there's still the like essential characteristics there. Um, and it is influenced by estrogen and testosterone. That's, I mean, that's to a degree why I think a lot of trans people are, they have mixed features a lot more often, from the start. Like, you can tell that there was a little bit of hormone exposure in fetal development
Mhm.
sometimes. Not all the time. And it's definitely not like, it's not like a tell. It's not like a validity thing. It definitely doesn't mean anything for trans people who, like, were, like, super, I don't know, like, trans men that used to be super feminine looking. You know, like, that doesn't mean they're not dysphoric, that doesn't mean they're not men. That doesn't mean, like, you know?
Yeah.
But there's a huge number of trans people that are intersex, the type of intersex that comes with, hormone exposure. There's also 40% of trans men have PCOS, reported one study.
What is that?
Polycystic ovarian syndrome, which it it's related to hormones, it's related to reproductive ability and like cycle. Uh, it basically causes increased testosterone. Like
Oh, okay.
that's the essential feature there. And the little theory behind that is that like PCOS, it's hereditary, to a degree. So, like, if your mom has PCOS and she has a testosterone spike during your development, and you're, like, also, uh, female, I guess, or female assigned at birth, then your likelihood to have PCOS is also higher, but it's also likely that you were exposed to testosterone from your mother's hormone spikes. And, like, that's what caused the differentiation in your brain and, like, caused the body identity part to, like, lock in place as, like, more masculine and feminine.
There's so many things, like so many reasons a person could turn out to be trans after
Yeah.
they're born. It's insane how many things there
There's
could be.
there's one theory, like, about like, dioxin, which is it's a thing that's in a lot of paper mill waste in,
Mhm.
like, in the cancer strip in Louisiana. It causes all sorts of terrible shit. It causes cancer, but most notably, or, like, I guess kinda notably, it causes hormone spikes or hormone imbalance. So there's possibly a trans person out there which that their parents had, like, a hormone spike from fucking dioxin exposure. Like,
That
there's all kinds of different things. There's, like, natural ways that it happens. There's, like, environmental reaction ways that it could happen.
yeah.
It's everything. Like, it's a lot of stuff,
Yeah,
but each of them is valid, I suppose.
it's crazy. Yeah, like there's so many things that we just don't know, and like people are trying to prevent us from gaining that knowledge, and I want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for real. Like, looking into, like, deeper studies about trans people is really difficult because you'll get, like, the top studies will be like, Do trans women have female brain? Look at this part of the brain that's a little bigger or smaller. See? Woman brain." And, like, you have to really go digging with certain terms to get anything that's, like that isn't the brain sex theory, because that's the brain sex theory, like, the functioning areas of the brain, like, some emotional parts are, like, different structurally, like, trans women have, a similar structure to cis women, like,
Mhm.
in their brain. But there's like, I mean, that could also be the, the body ownership theory. Like, they tie in together. They're all, like, equally valid theories, but the brain sex theory is the one that was most published or most publicized because it's the one that makes the most sense to cis people.
I think it's probably the most documented that I've seen.
Mhm.
Like I know there were I don't remember exactly when, but I think it was it the 80s or 90s when they did that study of like looking at trans women's brains and matching it up and all that. Um I
There've been a lot of studies since then about it, or a
Yeah, but
couple, I
like
guess.
I'm talking about like a specific like I think one of the first ones that they did that was like
Do you
on
know if
an
it was large scale or if it's, like, still referenced today?
I do not remember. All I know is that it was in a documentary that I saw before.
Huh. I mean, they've
um
been researching this for, like, quite a while,
right.
specifically with trans women more often than not because trans men are just lesbians. You're just a butch woman, but
Mhm.
trans women, it's a tangible thing to cis people. They're like, "Oh, if you're presenting that feminine, okay, there's something different about you." But, like, trans men they weren't as well researched because people often, like, brush them off as, like, being like, "Oh, you're just a masculine woman," because it's okay for women to be masculine. It's not okay for men to be feminine, so, like, by that effect, there's 2 different types of oppression going on there. There's 2 different, like, reasons why certain trans people were focused on. Like, trans women were much more researched, but they were much more hated,
Yeah.
like, much more openly, like, disgusting to cis people
I
because
think maybe
cis people overly focused on them.
yeah. I think that maybe there was like I guess more of an earnestness um to research trans women because like it was I guess the idea that it would be gay in some way or like
Yeah.
try to figure out is this okay? you know, cuz like
There
people
was
go ahead.
there was an earnestness, but there was also a good bit of, like I think there was malice in some of the research.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that, like Blanchard, well, he wasn't malice, he was fetishizing, and his structure for diagnosis of AGP versus HSTS, homosexual, transsexual, and AGP is autogynephile, which is someone who has a fetish for being a woman, while as homosexual, transsexual is a straight trans woman who who he could hypothetically have sex with. So that was who he was trying to diagnose, was the hot straight women. Like like there's so much bullshit with research on trans women. Like it's so fucked up.
Yeah.
Specifically Blanchard, but I don't know.
I think probably Freud messed a lot of people up
Oh
in
my
that
Christ,
field.
yeah. Dude. Fucking ugh. Freudian psychoanalysis and the damages it's caused.
Everyone has an Oedipus complex, and there's no way out of it. That's it.
Yeah. Look, there's so many jokes to be made around trans men and Freud's theory of penis envy, which is like, man, come on. Like that's fucked up.
Yeah. So there are more that I want to get to at some point, but I think this will probably wrap up this episode.
That's fine. I'd be happy to come on again if you have any specific topics that you think that I would know about.
Yeah, I would love that. I really appreciate you coming on to talk to me.
It was fun. I had a great time. I got to info dump for like an hour. Like,
yeah,
having
podcasts
fun.
are perfect for that.
No, for real. Oh my god, I should make a podcast.
You should. That would be great. Where can people find you?
I am on Twitter for the most part at catboy or no, trans_catboy. I was so lucky to snag that username. Like, how had nobody gotten that before, right? Just trans_catboy.
That's what
so
you
lucky.
Do you have multiple Twitter accounts?
I just have the one that I use.
Oh.
It's trans_catboy.
I thought it was something else. But yeah.
But other than that, like, I'm pretty sure I have my Twitch linked on my Twitter, and anywhere else is just like I don't really use that much, or like they're kind of dead platforms for me.
Yeah, Trans_catboy is a really good snack.
For
honestly.
real.
Damn.
Like it kind of like makes me angry though, because this means nobody has thought of trans catboys before. And that's why I picked the name.
I think
because like I care about trans catboys. I want to draw them.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate you coming on. Yeah, that was a great conversation. Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do this again.
Yeah, no, this was really fun. I'm glad to have been here. You're a great interviewer for sure. Like you're good at questions.
I appreciate that. Yeah. You have a good rest of your night.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.